Ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday morning. We had an incredible week of college football. A lot of explaining to do. I got to start with myself. Even though the best game, well, I don't know about the best game. I want to talk Georgia and Ole Miss, but I got a little admission. We do picks. Clearly, Zach's going to win this thing. It's almost written in stone. Zach was pretty strong in his no, Georgia's going to win. I'm like, I think Ole Miss got a shot. I picked Ole Miss. He picked Georgia. So I felt pretty good about my picks. And then during that game, I had already laid out Alabama is going to beat LSU because Alabama, Jalen Milroe is going to run the ball, and LSU has no ability to stop a running quarterback. It was just crystal clear. And like the sucker that I am, I live in Baton Rouge, and all the people on the streets like, no, we got a shot. I really feel like we got a shot. And I started to drink the Kool-Aid, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go with the home team, sucker. And I changed my pick to LSU. And because of that, Zach's lead has grown to an insurmountable 3 games. This late in the season, 3 games, he's got this. So I wanted to get that off my chest because it weighed on me a little bit. I made a grave mistake. A couple hours before kickoff, I switched to LSU. With that said, let's talk Georgia Ole Miss.
Let's make it clear that red stick Kool-Aid is not the same as regular Kool-Aid. So let's make it clear. The Kool-Aid you were drinking.
It was so clear. Yeah, mine wasn't clear. Mine was brown. You're right. That Kool-Aid was brown. But it was so clear Alabama was going to win that game. It's just what LSU cannot stop. They can't stop it. And LSU is really good when Nussmeier throws the ball down the field. And for whatever reason, this game they decided we're going to throw the outs. And we're going to throw behind the line of scrimmage. And I don't understand it. I just don't. But moving right along, let's talk Georgia Ole Miss. So I picked Ole Miss to win that game. I felt pretty confident about it. Pete Golding's defense has shown up the past couple of weeks. Their defensive line, their pressure has been unbelievable. We talked about this on the preview. A lot of people mentioned that. And Zach just told me it's impossible. Lane doesn't have this win in him. So, Zach, I want to hear your thoughts on how that happened.
Here's my statement on Georgia's win over Ole Miss as let's just say the Ole Miss skeptic of the show, the Ole Miss hater, realist, whatever we're doing. So this is a Reese's Christmas peanut butter cup. This is going to serve as my dose of humble pie. And Lane and Ole Miss shoved it in my face. All credit to them. This was a program win. This wasn't the win last year against LSU where they just happened, 2 bad defenses, and they just happened to outscore them. This was a program win. A full credit, full marks to them, full egg on my face. I'm going to eat my humble pie. You deserved it, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin.
Wait, what's your least favorite candy? You should have to eat your least favorite candy, not something you conveniently have laying around the house that very obviously is fresh, unless it's a Christmas tree from last Christmas.
Good point, but we make do with what we've got.
I'm going to have to explain to my wife that that's how we eat humble pie. We take out a Reese's thing, and I thought it was great. I'm like, yeah, this is how it works. Man, what do I have to eat for switching my pick to LSU? A lot of humble pie, apparently. Okay, so Pete Golding's defense was fantastic. And, you talked about it's a program win. I totally agree with you. Jackson Dart gets hurt right away, and backup quarterback comes in and just slings it down the field, and they go down and march one in. Defense just stoned them. It was a driving rainstorm for a lot of that game, and it wasn't a typical Ole Miss offensive performance, but they got it done with a bunch of dudes that a lot of people can't name.
That Ole Miss team can win a national championship, and that Ole Miss team is 8-2 now with a signature win, the first non-Alabama team to beat Florida in full 4 years, and they closed the regular season with at Florida and home against Mississippi State. Like, they're on the 18th green at this point. And they're going to go into the clubhouse, and maybe they're in the playoff, the SEC championship game, and maybe not. But either way, they're in the playoff. 96% certainty Ole Miss Rebels are going to be in the college football playoff. Chances, maybe with one of those, if they don't get there, you want to be the 5-6 seed. We all think they have a good shot to get there as well.
Basically the same percentage I would put on you being the football scoop man of the year. I mean, right there, 18th green, right?
18th green. Yeah, I was really disappointed with Mike Bobo's offense. I mean, I think Carson Beck entered the season as the front runner for the Heisman, or one of the top 2 or 3, and he's been disappointing in a number of these games this year. You lose Brock Bowers, who is a generational tight end. As a tight end connoisseur that I am, he was an outstanding college football player. But they have so many weapons on defense to be the number 3rd ranked team in the country and to be struggling offensively. And you look at the Alabama game; they did the same thing for half the game. So I don't know what's going on with Georgia offensively, but to only have 250 yards in this game, and I know the weather wasn't great, and there's a ton of those excuses, but the Mike Bobo offense of 2024 has been disappointing.
And historically, Ole Miss's defenses don't get those stops, and they got those stops. You're playing Georgia, at home in the rain. You need your defense. Your offense isn't clicking perfectly, and they got those stops. Big deal. Sorry, JB.
No, you're good. That was along the same lines I was about to trend, and that is Carson Beck, another interception. That's a dozen on the year against just 17 touchdown passes, I believe. And then to your note about winning those defensive stops, Ole Miss won this game in the trenches, only allowed its quarterbacks to be sacked once, and including having to throw in the replacement who ended up 5 of 6, spelling Jackson Dart while Dart was injured. Dart sacked only 1 time. Beck sacked 5 times. And Ole Miss's defense with 9 TFLs. I would like to know the last time a team had 9 TFLs against Georgia. Georgia's just been such a machine up front. That's what it does to opposing teams. And so Georgia got Georgia'd this weekend.
Yeah. I think the only other game this weekend was LSU Alabama. We kind of talked about that. Jalen Milroe just did a better job than LSU's defense. The TV cuts after a long quarterback run, the TV cut to Brian Kelly in Blake Baker's ear is just unbelievable. I'm like, golly, they got that like 7 times between the last 2 games for LSU. Whoo, buddy. It's like the Grim Reaper over your shoulder, but whatever. That's all I got in that game.
Yeah, and now, John, you brought this up Thursday, and I think it's good to circle back to it. LSU is technically not out of the SEC championship race, but they have 3 losses, and I think LSU's biggest opponent moving forward is going to be the disease of opt-outs and looking ahead. They should win their final 3 games. They close with Florida, Vandy, and Oklahoma, but how much buy-in are they going to have when their goals realistically are now out the window? And also, this team is just, as we've proven, very, very limited under anything less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah, and this LSU team was supposed to be built on the strength of its offensive line and guys that had to start year 1 for Brian Kelly back in 2022 who weren't really ready to start at the time. And instead, this LSU offensive line is not dominant. It struggles way too often. The running game is anemic. And yes, LSU probably will be favored in each of its 3 final games, but I think we've seen that LSU is capable of losing any or all 3 of its final 3 games. I mean, Florida, depending on the status of Lagway and having allegedly the news of the Billy Napier question status behind them, then can play a little bit more freely. If Vanderbilt's good enough to beat Alabama, it's darn sure good enough to beat LSU. It just has to get Diego Pavia back and operating at a high level. So LSU technically not eliminated from the SEC race, but now with critical losses to Alabama and Texas A&M, that 3rd loss to open the season against USC. And I'm not convinced LSU's done losing in the regular season.
All right, let's turn the page. That's the end of our podcast. I'm kidding. Let's go some short hits. Ohio State had Purdue moving right along. Dan Lanning's team is fun to watch. I'm not sure I would call them dominant, but they pull away and they pull away and they pull away, and they're a lot of fun. And Dan is showing off to America, or their video staff is doing a great job showing the true Dan Lanning. The dude comes prepared. He's got great ideas, great motivation, obviously great X's and O's, heck of a recruiter, and it's all coming together. bold prediction. Anything else?
No, those videos have been. I mean, that's the gold standard of what every video staff in the country is trying to do, and that's give the public and primarily recruits a glimpse into the program and get those guys thinking, I want to play for this guy. How do I find a way to get into this program and be part of what they're doing at Oregon? I mean, it just looks like the most fun thing in the world. And I think you have an accurate description of what this Oregon team has been so far. They have the best win of the country or of the season in Ohio State, and then just kind of been on cruise control since then, and are going to be with at Wisconsin at night this week. Not going to be easy. And then a bye week in Washington, and then they'll play the Ohio State-Indiana winner for the number 1 overall seed in the playoff.
Yeah, Ohio State is the best team in college football, and it's not remotely as good as its own. Or excuse me, Oregon is the best team in college football, and it's not remotely as good as its own video department. There's a difference there. The video department is dominant. Oregon is just really good.
Well said.
So, you said it's predominantly for recruits. It is for recruits. It's also for the base, the donors want to see that stuff. It's for the NIL opportunities for the current team and the future team recruits, as you were saying. It's great for the university. They're doing a great job. Speaking of bold predictions, Miami did not win.
It's been coming for a while. Miami's danced with death multiple times this season, and I only wish that I hadn't come on these very airwaves and said there's no way Georgia Tech can win this game because Miami is just too consistent offensively. So that's my regret. But this Miami team is really good, really improved, but they're too flawed to go undefeated. Credit to Haynes King, as Pete Thamel reported, was an actual true game time decision, and that game time decision was pivotal for them to win this game.
The kid's got a heart, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He just kept getting up.
Yeah, and son of a one of the most respected Texas high school football coaches, Longview out in East Texas. His career is a great study because he went to A&M out of high school. Certainly thought he was going to be the next great Aggie quarterback. Didn't work out for him or his head coach, and now found his ultimate fit at Georgia Tech. And it's just kind of a reminder for everyone. We go to the convention every year, and you always hear these coaches at these big time schools. They always say chase, fit, not a logo. And it's all, you kind of think, well, that's easy for you to say. You're at Michigan or whatever. But Haynes King's career is kind of a reminder of that. And at Longview High School, he never thought he'd be finding his place in college football at Georgia Tech. But now here he is.
He rushed 20 times for over 100 yards, only threw it 6 times, but didn't have an incompletion and did have a touchdown pass. And I think what's noteworthy, and we documented it on this podcast, that Miami had been dancing with the devil several times, be it the Virginia Tech game at home or the road game at Cal, and controversy in both of those games. This was no fluke whatsoever. Georgia Tech led this game for the final 42 minutes. Think about that. 42 minutes Georgia Tech led this game, nearly the entirety of the final 3 quarters. That's an emphatic. That's not Georgia Tech winning the way it did a year ago because Miami listened to the wrong analytics person or whatever and botched the late game sequence as bad as I've ever seen. And Georgia Tech threw a Hail Mary. Haynes King did that, by the way. No, they just dominated. They just won this game as the tougher, more physical, and better executing football team.
It's a message from Brent Key. I think there's probably no coach better as an underdog against ranked teams than Brent Key. Has done a really fabulous job. That win over Florida State to open the year in Ireland hasn't aged very well, but it was a top win over a top 10 team at the time. This one will definitely age a little bit better than that one.
Yeah, great point, Doug. Brent Key, the new Jeff Brom.
Jeff Brom is also the current Jeff Brom, but yes.
Very different. How about Buster Faulkner? Dude calls up. Great scheme. Works both quarterbacks. They had several 3rd and longs, kind of critical 3rd and longs, and the dude schemes up and gets the receivers running wide open. I'm like, golly, Buster's a dude.
ball coach.
Kennesaw State just opened too. Moving right along, Texas handled Florida the way you would expect Texas to handle Florida this season. Zach, any quick thoughts there?
Yeah, this was the ultimate get-right game. They needed this. It's kind of a sad statement on the state of the offense when you have veteran offensive line, veteran quarterback, that they need to go have a get-right game, but they did. Sark was in his bag calling plays. Florida extremely they're playing with both hands tied behind their back, playing a walk-on quarterback. So this is the game that they did what they should have done, and a rough weekend, we can say, for Florida AD Scott Strickland. And they had one of those screenshots that when you're watching the game, it's going to live in infamy. And Doug, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When they have the shot of him on the sideline and the visor just looking like he wants to be anywhere else, with the quote of his statements about Billy Napier returning, along with the score of 42-0 in the third quarter. It's like, yeah, that's going to stick to you for a while.
Not the meanest thing that I saw all weekend, though. The meanest thing I saw all weekend was the Barstool guys. Portnoy was he wasn't very nice to Mississippi State. Whew, buddy. Tennessee wasn't particularly nice to him either. Oh, man, it was brutal. Apparently, he's got a guy who's a big Mississippi State fan, and they were at Ole Miss. So they did their pregame show. They have a pregame show, I guess. And Portnoy was – let's just say he's in the drink for Ole Miss over Mississippi State.
Okay.
Yeah,
he wasn't very polite.
I think he donated $40,000 to their NIL fund at the pregame show too. So have fun with that, Lane.
Wow. Okay. All right, moving right along. Indiana got tested a little bit. Michigan had almost no yards in the game, yet they were in it. How about that one?
Yeah, this is the first time Indiana has really had their resiliency tested. I mean, they've been blowing teams out left and right. Michigan, the defending national champs, still not bowl eligible. They're stuck at 5-5 with the loss, and Indiana improves to 10-0. Really, the story of this game: Michigan had 3 chances deep in the red zone to score, first and goal from inside the 10, from like the 6 and the 7 yard line, and came away with 1 touchdown in those 3 red zone trips. So this is a program where the former offensive line coach is now your head coach. They've won the offensive line of the year award, the Jim Moore Award, for 2 years running, and unable to punch it in against Indiana. That is a statement about where both of these programs are right there in itself.
So you said Michigan's stuck at 5 wins. I think they only have 2 to play. One of them is Northwestern in the Big House. Have to win that game, because then they got Ohio State. And Northwestern, you got to – come on.
Yeah, if you lose to Northwestern, your season is going to end with Ohio State dancing on your carcass in front of 100,000 of their closest friends. They're gonna try and score 100 regardless. But if your national championships season, the season after your national championship ends on your rivals' field with them ending the losing streak while they go on to Big Ten championship, whatever, and that's terrible. That's the worst case scenario. So you got to beat Northwestern.
They've got a week off before facing Northwestern, and Northwestern right now is sitting on 4 wins and would like to make back-to-back bowl games under David Braun. So that's going to be a tough one, because Northwestern's got Ohio State, then Michigan, and then Illinois. So they're not going to beat Ohio State, which means they're going to be in a position of sitting there at 4-6 and desperately needing 2 wins in their final 2 games. So Michigan gets a week off to try and figure some more things out in a season that they figured out they're not nearly as good as a year ago, but they are very flawed, whereas Northwestern will come in there a desperate group of Wildcats.
Nice one. So, they got some guys with experience coaching, 2 different fields, whatever you call it, teams, like Connor Stallions, Connor Stallions did it again, for the 2nd year in a row, right? He's now coaching 2 teams. Moving right along. That was a terrible joke. I should be forced to mute myself the rest of the time. BYU, Utah, Holy War. We all said this was going to be a really good game. We all thought BYU found a way. BYU found a way. There was Mark Harlan was very upset. He got fined. This is kind of how the season has gone for these teams, right?
It is. It was awesome. What an atmosphere. I stayed up till the bitter end to watch it. And then shout out Jess Bryce, because on the weekend she just automatically starts looking for press conferences and quotes for us to write about on Football Scoop. And so I was already doing some late night writing about Dion and the officiating down in Lubbock from that Colorado-Texas Tech game. And she was like, John, the Utah AD just went off. And I was like, send it to me. So that is why I posted Mark Harlan blasting the officiating at 3:06 a.m., I think, Eastern time, Sunday morning, Saturday night. I watched the game. The announcers immediately on the broadcast said, that's a penalty. You have to call it. It was a penalty on the defensive holding that sustained the drive. I think it's understandable to be incredibly frustrated in that moment to have that call made. There was also moments before where Jake Retzlaff was dead in the end zone, and the play actually got blown dead because Kalani had called a timeout. Now the TV cameras clearly showed Kalani calling the timeout and the official granting it, but the stadium was so loud nobody heard it. So that lets you know automatically it was a hell of an atmosphere. But yeah, Big 12 officiating, particularly in the crosshairs this weekend, understandable as to a lot of it, but I've never, ever seen an AD. I don't even remember hearing of an AD making a statement like that. So I'm sure he's letting their fans know, since they played this game for the first time since 2021 and only the second time this in the 20s that it's been played, that he's got his team's back, his program's back, his fan base is back, and certainly his coaching staff's back. But, BYU got that holding penalty for 10 yards, which moved it from the 1 to the 11, and still had to execute down the field to get into position to kick the game-winning field goal. So I don't think, regardless of your opinion on the penalty, I don't think it should take away from BYU's late-game execution, especially on the road in that environment, to get the win and stay unbeaten.
Yeah, I thought it was weak. I thought it was really weak comments by the Utah AD. I mean, it's not the ref's fault you didn't score a single point after halftime. And I mean, Utah is 1-5 in Big 12 play. 4 of those losses by 1 score. Obviously, they're all frustrated. They just can't find any sort of semblance of consistency offensively. That's why you lost the game. That's the story of your season, not the refs. If you score 3 points in the second half, then BYU has to score a touchdown. They're probably not going to do that. You win the game. That's it right there.
And Utah dominated field position. Even in the second half, Utah dominated field position and lived out near midfield or right at the 50, or even a couple of possessions, including a very late possession. It started at BYU's 49-yard line. And so I think that's significant. And you're going to call out the officials in a game, you probably want to see a discrepancy of like 15 penalties against your team and 4 or 5 on the other. Both of these teams were penalized 10 times apiece.
Yeah, I thought it was weak as well.
And this one also had to be Zach's favorite game of the year because they were both in their primary jersey colors. So score aside, had to be on Zach's radar.
Great point, Doug.
I had the exact same thought. I was like, Zach would be so happy to watch this game. All right, so we talked about Ashton Jeanty needing – I kind of felt like he needed a breakout game. And he went, like 207, 3 touchdowns. And you're like, okay, all right. It's crazy that I'm like, thought he could do better. 207 for 3, whatever.
I feel like we all said on this pod Thursday that this would be a bit of a slog, that Choate has done a really nice job at Nevada. And Boise State, Jeanty ran for 209 yards or whatever it was, but Boise State never ran away from Nevada in this game. And I don't think that necessarily helps Jeanty's Heisman cause, although Cam Ward losing over the weekend by default boosts Ashton Jeanty's candidacy.
It's hard.
He needs a big one. Sorry.
It's hard to say that someone a program at 3-8 is doing a great job, but to quote Coach Prime, like if you're going to get Nevada, get them now, because Jeff Choate's going to turn that thing around, and they'll be much better in the years to come.
All right, I'm coming to Prime in 1 second, but I do want to we've talked about bold predictions a couple of times. That's the Kansas that John Bryce was counting on. Good job versus Iowa State. I think we all talked about that one on Thursday. Moving right along.
Yeah, that game is the epitome of regression to the mean for both teams, Kansas and Iowa State.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I think two things happened in the Big 12 away from the officiating controversies, and that is BYU winning keeps that conference's hopes alive to potentially be a 2-bid league. Because if BYU finishes 12-0 and then loses the Big 12 title game to Colorado, then I still think BYU and Colorado both get in. Very similar to the ACC. I think the ACC was probably revealed this weekend as a 1-bid team, 1-bid league.
We'll see. I think I saw at least one poll that had Miami still above SMU. And, you got to see how that plays out. Who knows?
But yeah, right. But if Miami wins out and then beats SMU, a 2-loss SMU, I don't necessarily think would get in that scenario over a 1-loss BYU.
Especially because BYU beat SMU.
Beat them.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. That's why I realize we're projecting here and we're not even to the second CFP rankings. But I thought the events of the weekend, especially had BYU lost, then I thought you would be staring at the Big 12 and the ACC each as being 1-bid leagues. I still think the ACC will probably be a 1-bid league.
All right, give me some thoughts on Coach Prime's team and how they're doing, because they keep winning.
They're playing a lot better defense than I think a lot of people realize, because the highlights are always Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter making an amazing catch on offense or defense. So they still have way too many penalties, 14 penalties in that game. And Deion Sanders didn't complain about officiating, but he made a comment saying an official made an inappropriate comment to him or said something he probably should not have said to me. And he was asked to clarify, was that comment made directly to you, Coach? And he said, yeah, it was. We don't know what that was. But again, just all the bad headaches for the Big 12 this weekend in terms of its officiating. But Colorado playing really nice defense. That Texas Tech offense got up 13-0 early and then only scored 14 points the final 50 or so minutes at home. I think that's significant. Colorado is rounding into a much more complete team than I would have ever expected in the opening month of this season.
Yeah, and to add to that, really disappointing for Texas Tech. I mean, now year 3, you got to give your fans some dividends on the investment they've made, both emotionally and literally into this program. And you get up to a 13-0 lead at home, biggest home game you've had in years, and they get outscored 41-14 is just disappointing. In the second half, they're up 13-10 at the half. Colorado marches right down to score. Texas Tech answers with a touchdown. It's now 20-17 at that point. Colorado marches again to score. And then from that point forward, Texas Tech's offense went turnover on downs, interception, fumble, turnover on downs, touchdown. Now it's 34-27. Your defense forces a 3-and-out, and then you give up a scoop and score at your own 6-yard line, and that's ball game. For a program that needs to get over the hump, they got to the hump, and then they fell right back down, and they're kind of just still where they've been for the last 15 years, really. I mean, this is a program that hasn't won 9 regular season games since 2009, and now they're 6-4, so it's not going to happen this year either.
I mean, Colorado, I think, had 25 yards in the first quarter. They started off really slow. They heated up a little bit there in the second quarter. I think ended the half with like 175 yards of total offense or something like that. But second half exploded, 21 points and then 10 points, as Zach kind of talked about. I feel like this is kind of where people expected Colorado to be. You got 2 of the best players in college football. They still have issues in protection. I don't think it's all protection. I remember seeing one play where it seemed like Shedeur took a 7-step drop from the shotgun. Just made no sense.
Where you going,
was able to kind of wiggle out of a couple tackles and things like that. But I don't think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're a fringe playoff team. Are they playing pretty good? Are they a top 25 team? Sure. I can't help but think about what this team looks like next year without some of those star players and what they do in the transfer portal and things like that. What this team looks like next year is going to be vastly, vastly different than what they've looked like the past 2 years.
Great. That's a great point. And to your point about some of the sacks and the protection issues, Doug, I will say Deion Sanders said post game he didn't spare Shedeur from criticism. He said, a couple of those sacks aren't on the line. Shedeur just held the ball too darn long. So I thought that was interesting. And we're talking about BYU as a potential playoff team. They've still got some work left. They've got to play Utah and Oklahoma State at home. Obviously, a really bad Oklahoma State team, but then they've got a game in Kansas City against Kansas, and we know that Kansas can flat out score the football, and that Kansas is in the mode of having not much to play for except the role of spoiler. So they'll be up for that game that I believe is going to be at Arrowhead Stadium.
Shedeur is the heart of that team. He's fun to watch.
I kind of wonder at this point if Shedeur might cannibalize some Heisman votes from his own teammate. Yeah, because this is the year where no quarterback has really stepped up and taken the mantle. And Shadeur's now kind of by default the top quarterback in the country because Ewers and Beck haven't been there. Ward, obviously, his team lost. So it's wide open in a good and bad way right now.
I hope Shedeur and Travis Hunter both get invited to New York strictly for the content. I want to see have two dudes who are Heisman Trophy finalists because I just want the content so that I can give all of our loyal readers and listeners the content.
And Genty, I told you all week one, Genty's going to win this thing. But, yeah, it's going to be great fun. All right, let's talk America for a second. Army has done what they needed to do. They got here, right? I think they have an off week, and then they get Notre Dame. The issue is Notre Dame has found itself, I think. And so it's a tall order. They got to beat Notre Dame. JB, they're playing in where?
Yankee Stadium.
Yankee Stadium. Big one. JB, you going to be there?
Shamrock Series. I will be there. The aforementioned lovely Jessica Bryce has some meetings for Notre Dame that week in New York City. So we're headed up midweek. I may even sneak in a Friday night concert at Madison Square Garden. And, we'll be there. I'm excited. We all have some friends on that Army staff. Obviously know several members of the Notre Dame coaching staff. It's an exciting time. That's going to be a great game. What a scene. Who would have ever thought we would get undefeated and probably a top 15-ish Army team by that point in the season versus a one-loss Notre Dame in Yankee Stadium. You want to talk about college football great for America. That setting,
awesome.
And that backdrop is college football great for America.
Trump might show up at that. I mean, that's the type of thing Trump would come to. In Yankee Stadium? This is amazing. God,
you'll have to invite him, Scott.
I don't have the Donald's number. I can reach out to a lot of people. The Donald, no.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I would encourage everyone listening to go find the article that I wrote about Army's 21-play, 94-yard drive to put the North Texas game away. And I bring that up because as I was writing it, I wanted to bring to you guys, it occurred to me what a moron I am because I was writing about how poetic, how cinematic that Army drive was, how North Texas is writing their own demise and struggling for forward. They were really their own worst enemy, and they traveled a great distance but ended up right back where they were. And I was writing it, I'm laughing to myself. I was like, I'm sure there are a lot of really great novels that tell the exact story I'm just describing here, but I'm so poorly read of the classics of literature, I can't point to a single one. So I'll just say it is like a great novel without pointing out to which novel it actually is. But just go read it. Yeah. It was cinematic, novelistic, whatever.
Just to perfectly explain the relationship Zach and I have, I click on that article and I knew what it was going to be. The headline's like, this is cinematic, this is poetic, Army just marching the field 94 yards. And his first paragraph is all about some novel. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, Zach, come on, man. Come on. Just give me the football. And here we are. God bless America. I love this country. Okay, I want to give a quick shout out. I know JB's been talking about this, thinking about this a lot. Washington State, they just keep winning. They're not going to go anywhere. But it's a heck of a story. Jake Dicker and those guys have done a great job this season.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. They're going to be 11-1, and again, I don't know if that means they're in the Holiday Bowl or the Tony the Tiger El Paso Bowl, or I don't know where it leaves them in the postseason. But I think you learn a lot about a team in those situations, and Doug could speak to it exponentially better than me. But to me, what I take away from this Washington State team is phenomenal program culture and competitive character.
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
All of the above.
All right. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen? I thought it was a great weekend in college football.
Yeah, I got one real quick. Doing what we do, we understand that how you word things is very important. And for Brian Bohannon to come out and speak his truth after the university came out and said that he stepped down, and for him to come out and say, not so fast, my friend. I didn't step down. You guys fired me. I think that deserves a standing ovation to have the guts to stand up for yourself and not fade off into the darkness quietly. I mean, he told his truth. He wanted people to know, and most importantly, probably his team and his players to know that it wasn't his choice. He's not stepping away from something he built into an FCS contender that then made the jump that probably didn't get the resources that he deserved. So I want to make sure we recognize that. And I know Zach wrote about it this morning.
Great point, Doug. I think I had some coaches point out to me yesterday that, after the news trickled out, that I believe that's the lowest paying FBS job in America. It's one of the lowest. Now, it's all perspective because it still pays almost $400,000. But your point is they have to invest. They're in a booming and has been booming metro area just north of Atlanta. It's been booming since the 90s. They need to devote more resources there. My shout out would be, I'm glad Scott brought up Washington State because I wanted to go the FCS direction. Tim Plow and UC Davis just smacked Montana on the road Saturday night. UC Davis in Plow's first year, now 9-1. Mike Jacobs and Mercer also, I believe, 9-1. They're going to win the SoCon, it looks like, in their first year. 2 first-year coaches doing fabulous jobs at the FCS level. Shout out to both of those. Then one of the FCS level's veteran-most coaches, Jason Simpson, led UT Martin to a huge win over the weekend. They're in position also to return to the playoffs and win an unprecedented in the entirety of the program 4th consecutive conference championship. So you guys know I love FCS ball, and there's some damn good coaching jobs going on this year at the FCS level. And, of course, one more first-year guy that just keeps winning, Billy Kosh at Stony Brook. They're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah. If you guys don't know, UC Davis, I mean, that's a wine school. And Plow's a great dude. And for him to go in there and just say, we're going to play hard-nosed. And, a wine school beat up Montana. Come on, man. It's huge.
Yeah.
Might be the first time ever a school has been described as a wine school. I want that on the record for sure.
So it might be the only one in the country.
They're not a wine and cheese school. They're just a wine school. Okay.
Just wine. Wine.
Wine and swine. They're a wine and swine school.
Like a great novel, I'm going to end
baby. Wine and swine. They need some t-shirts. UC Davis, wine and swine with a football on it. Let's go.
And Zach's
messing up. Shout out to Lane Kiffin.
Shout out to Lane Kiffin. Football Scoop.
I love the humility, Zach.
God bless America. Go America.